I wish that I could swim and sleep like a shark does. I'd fall to the bottom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Comprehensible Input Podcast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people about interesting topics in English that we can all understand. Today, we're talking about literature and reading, and our very special guest today is Anna. Anna, hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. One of the reasons I asked you on, Anna, is because I remember quite a few years ago you told me that you had a challenge to read something like 100 books in a year, and it completely blew my mind. So I wanted to bring you on to speak about reading and literature. Before we get into it, can you just tell us something about yourself and how you got into reading?
Well, I got into reading about 30 years ago, I believe. I'm 34 now. And I guess I started reading at the small age of 4. My mother says it's more likely 5, but I pride myself on starting to do it at 4. And the main person who, oh my God, the main person who helped me with that was my grandpa. And he used to do this trick. I'm not entirely sure was it a trick or not a trick, but he would say, "Oh no, I forgot my glasses, and could you please read something for me, instead of me reading?" And I said, "Of course, Grandpa." And that's how I basically started to read. And I guess because he was nice to me, reading was associated for me with something, pleasant, something you do with people who care for you. And also, when I was little, there wasn't any internet, basically no TikTok, no Instagram, so there was little for me to do to, entertain myself. I guess now I wouldn't be so much into reading if I were a modern kid. But yeah, me being not modern helps with reading a lot.
So I wasn't much of a reader when I was a child, but I do remember the first book that I really got into was a Star Wars book, right? So there were these movies, Star Wars, that were hugely popular, and then there was a trilogy by Timothy Zahn that I remember that I really, really loved. Do you have any book or any series of books that really stand out as being like a book or a series that you loved in your childhood?
I guess I had my favorite book, and it wasn't one story. It was like one book with 3 stories in it, and it was stories by Astrid Lindgren, the Swedish writer. It was Carlson on the Roof, Pippi Longstocking, and the less known one called Emil from Lönneberg or von Lönneberg. I'm not entirely sure how it translates to English, but I used to reread it every time I was sick. And when you're sick and you're little, it's not that bad. You're just lying in bed drinking tea with jam or something and rereading the same book. At least that's how it was for me. And I don't know, I probably reread it 4 or 5 times. My sister used to make fun of me because, like, why don't you pick another book? But for some reason, it was maybe the translation was so good. I recently finally knew the person who translated it. Her name is Liliana Lungina, and she apparently did a very good job because it just very good. I don't know. It's just very lifelike. I don't know Swedish, so I cannot estimate like how really good it was made. But it feels so nice to read it, especially when you're a kid. So yeah, this is my favorite. I guess Pippi Longstocking could be called like the first feminist figure of my childhood. So yeah, I'm really glad that I had this book as a kid.
And bringing us back to the present moment, are you reading anything at the moment?
Yes, the last book I finished like a couple of days ago was, and I'm a little bit afraid to say it to a person from Great Britain, it was Jane Austen, Northanger Abbey, because I don't know, every time I say I like Jane Austen to a British person, it feels as if somebody would say to me, "Oh, Dostoevsky is my favorite writer," and because we've been made to read it at school, it feels so like not something someone could possibly like. But yeah, I liked her a lot, and I still like her. And also, I read nonfiction, of course. I'm currently reading a book called State of Affairs about, well, affairs in people's relationship. And also, I'm listening to Becoming from Michelle Obama, which is huge. It's like 19 hours or so. But I just noticed that since I started learning German, my English comprehension leaves me. And since I still want to understand at least something, I train my, what it's called, audioability? No, audio comprehensing? Well, something like that with audiobooks. So yeah, it helps a bit.
Yeah, I don't know, audio comprehension or just listening skills in the
Yeah,
normal
yeah.
world. All right, let's get into some fiction then. So it's an incredibly difficult question, but let's start with the difficult one. What makes a good book or a good story, in your opinion?
Um, Actually, I thought about it some time ago, and what I like in a book or in any story, like in movie, in any story you have, is the different layers it has. Like for me, the best book is a book you could read, let's say, at 8, or okay, maybe not 8, like 12. And it's fun, it's interesting. The plot is very, I don't know, amazing, and it's just good fun. And then you could reread it at 25, and you're like, oh my God, it's so much deeper than I thought at first. And then you could reread it at 35, and you notice something else. But still, it wasn't boring for you when you were younger. You still had something from it. So for me, it's the best one. And also, for example, speaking of detectives, um, it's like the same principle. For me, it's cool when a person who has very cool, I don't know, some Sherlock Holmes could see the thing right from the beginning. And if you're a bit dumber, you could see things a bit later. And if you like me and you are not a good detective, you see things even later than that, but you still feel that sweet sense of, oh, I got to this all by myself. I'm so clever, damn. So yeah, I guess this is the main thing for a book to be interesting for me. It's when you could have any level of knowledge or age or like life experience, you still could get something from a book. Because I have a bad example of this, and I need to say I'm sorry for any Elizar Yudkowsky fans. You know this book called Harry Potter and, oh my God, how is it in English? Harry Potter and Rational Thinking, something like this. It's
I
like,
don't know this one.
yeah, it's like a fan fiction, like, but a very famous fan fiction. And in this book, Harry Potter lives not with Dursleys, but with, like, his aunt marries a professor. And so he lives in this very intellectual family, reads a lot of books. And when he gets into Hogwarts, he starts to use all these scientific things to analyze the magic and all that stuff. And what I hated in this book is that it was the complete opposite of what I liked. So the author would say something, and then Harry understood it, and you have no idea what did he understand. You know only that this is one thing that author has in his mind, and you have to guess it. It's not like something you could think one way when you're little, another way when you're older. It's one thing, and you have to guess what it is. And it's what I hated back in schools, you know, when, I don't know if it's the same in British schools, but in Russian schools, it's like the teacher has the right answer and you have to guess it. That's just horrible. I hated it.
Yeah, one thing, one thing I enjoy about literature is the subjective nature of it, and
Yeah.
the idea. I think the point that you're making, like we had this a little bit in school too, where the teacher asked the question, like, what was the author trying to say here? And the teacher has the right answer. Now, for me, the beauty of literature is that the opinion of the reader can count just as much as the intention of the writer. Like, I'm reading some Murakami at the moment, and with Murakami, everything relies on the speculation of the reader, and not so.
Just to make sure, which one?
Right now, I'm reading the Wind Up Bird Chronicle.
Oh, okay. I just because there's two Murakami, Haruki and Ryu, and I wanted to make sure we're talking about the same one.
Haruki Murakami, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of David Lynch of literature. Yeah, and that speculation, for me, that's where the joy is. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about having those discussions and realizing that, your interpretation can be different to someone else's interpretation. And as you reread those books, if they are layered well, you're right, you come away with a different idea. Like you mentioned this thing about changing over time. I first read A Hero of Our Time by Lermontov about maybe 15 years ago. And I loved this Pechorin character. And I read it again about maybe 6 months ago. And I thought, like, I hate this Pechorin character.
Yeah,
But
what a
it's still, I
freak.
loved the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting how we evolve as people. The book stays the same, but our interpretation of that book changes over time. Anyway, I don't want to make this all about myself, but I want to ask you about likable characters, because sometimes people. The reason I ask this question is because I recently finished reading "Tender Is the Night" by Fitzgerald. It's not his most well-known book, but I remember reading a review about it, and they said, I didn't like the book because I didn't like any of the characters. Now, for me, this was like, it was such a strange criticism because I thought maybe Fitzgerald wanted to criticize the Americans that were living in France in the 1920s. Maybe those characters were supposed to be unlikable. Is it important for you in books to have likable characters?
Uh, I would say that it is important for me in a sense that I need to like something about characters. It doesn't mean that they have to be ideal, but like it means that they should be more or less real, I guess. Because if there is a character who is like too perfect and not realistic at all, I wouldn't find it likable either. So I guess for me, it's like because at the same time, if all the characters are just shameless bastards who do unspeakable things, it would also be not very lifelike, I guess. So I think, yeah, likable, but then again, each of us have a different sense of likability, probably. So,
Sure.
yeah.
We've mentioned a couple of authors already, and I mentioned this Lermontov, who's certainly part of like this Russian canon, this classic literature. I'm going to throw another difficult question at you. What makes something a classic? Is it just a book being old, or does it need something more?
Um, Actually, I have no idea. I think that probably chance has a lot to do with it, and but then again, if you think about it, I guess it should have some resonance to the reader in the modern times also. Like as I said about Jane Austen, she's what, like 200 years old? I mean, her works. But still, when you read about it, you see that the people are very much like the modern people. Well, of course, not in all the ways, but still the characters, the flaws, the banter, and yeah, the how they irritate each other. It's very modern, like, and I think Pichorin also, you could probably see, if not the same people among your acquaintances, but at least some people who are inspired by this idea of, I don't know, alpha male or something. But yeah, it's very. I was surprised by your choice of a book. How did you find it? Why? What was your reason for reading it?
Oh, it was just recommended to me a long time ago. So I liked, um, I'd read some Dostoevsky, of course, like every person who reads, and then somebody recommended this Lermontov book, and I hadn't even heard of him as a writer. I
Mm.
think it was I was working in a language school with some teacher who had just finished reading the book, so he gave it to me and said, "Oh, read this." Yeah, and like you, I was blown away by how it does resonate because we think of things 200, 300 years ago as being, we think of people as being vastly different from ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you read these books, I read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It's the only one I've read, I'm sorry. And again, like that wit, that sarcasm that this female character had. And I know it seems blatantly sexist, but I had that idea that, women 200 years ago, they probably weren't that sarcastic. They probably couldn't like outsmart men in social situations. But Jane Austen really shines a light on that to say, like, hey, this thing of like strong, smart women, this isn't a new phenomenon. We've always been here.
Yeah, I guess that was what I like too. And this is a strange thing because I read Jane Eyre later, and it struck me as if it was written much earlier because it's very Christian, very modest, very, oh, I should sacrifice myself for a man or something like that. And it was like Jane Austen feels so much more modern than that. And I guess that's what makes her a classic. Then again, Jane Eyre is also a classic for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. So I guess you could never know what makes a book classic one.
I like the character of Jane Eyre. I thought, I had a lot of sympathy with her as a character. I just really didn't like the male love interest. I just thought he was, I don't know, just a boring character.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
also very, very, sorry, very strange just because I finished this Northanger Abbey recently, and it makes fun of the Gothic novels before that, like all the stereotypes, all the, dramatic surroundings and unnatural characters and very, Gothic, I don't know, castles and all that, and cliche. And then I read Jane Eyre, and it feels as if Jane Austen made fun of this book, with like dramatic castle and mad wife locked up somewhere in the room. So yeah, it's just a full circle. So it's strange.
moving on to one of my favorite writers. I was in Prague a couple of years ago and I went to the Franz Kafka Museum. Kafka is one of my all-time favorites. And there was a quote from Kafka that read something like, books should affect us like a disaster, like the death of someone we loved more than ourselves. Is this is this hyperbolic? Is this too much? Can a book really have such an effect? And also, why would we want to feel like that?
Well, I think if you're Franz Kafka, it probably could, because, he was a deeply troubled man with a lot of problems. But I'm not sure I can agree with him here because my expectations from a book is not exactly like that. Probably because life right now is like stressful enough. I would probably want something more escapist. But then again, I read Kafka very long time ago, but if I remember correctly, I think that this book about I always make this mistake. In Russian, it's like process, but in English, it's another thing.
Yeah, so in English it's called The Trial, but in
The
German I think it's
trial,
called Der
yeah,
Prozess or something
yeah,
too.
exactly. The trial. I think it would be nice to read this book for anybody who is trying to understand something about life in Russian Federation. The absurdity and like the stress and so yeah, I guess it could be useful. But no, I don't think when I read a book, I don't exactly want to experience a death of somebody who I loved better than myself. But in a sense, I think he's right. In a sense that books can be really transformative, if that's what he meant, of course. And I'm not sure that's that's so.
Yeah, well, I guess it's very open to interpretation. I'm just wondering if you've
Definitely.
ever had that feeling. I've had a few crushing feelings from reading a book where, the average person on the street might tell me, like, what are you talking about? It's just a made-up character. It's just a fictional character. But I have had some of those, like, really crushing moments. Have you ever experienced that? Do you remember anything where you just think, like, I have to put this book down because I'm overcome with emotion at what's going on?
Oh, well, it definitely happened a long time ago, and I cannot even remember what the book was, but I definitely remember crying over a book, which was strange. And even now, when I hear somebody talking about a book which made them cry, I'm a little bit envious, to have such deep emotions over a story. It just feels so cool. But mostly, I guess I heard that from people who read fantasy for some reason. Maybe it's just a popular genre right now. I don't know. So maybe I should try that too. Apparently, that's where all the fun is going on.
All right, we will get back a little bit to fiction towards the end, but I just want to bring up some other issues connected to reading. There are, of course, people who prefer reading a book, a physical book where they have the paper, they smell the pages, all of that stuff. Of course, we have newer developments nowadays. We have like Kindles or other e-readers and also audiobooks. What do you think of these things like e-readers and audiobooks? Is it killing the tradition, or is it good that they're getting more people into reading?
Well, speaking of audiobooks, I actually think it is way more traditional than even paper books because, as we all know, writing is a quite recent development. We used to tell stories to each other, and even when we had books, I mean, we, like people of the past, it was quite costly. It was not cheap, and it was a tradition again in Jane Austen times or Jane Eyre, when women used to sit and work, I mean, some needle thing, and somebody would read aloud so they could listen to. So it was as if an audiobook just narrated with your mother or sister or like anybody who would read that. So yeah, I don't think it's not real books or something. I listen to them myself. The only problem I have is that I need to rewind it every time I get distracted, and I get distracted a lot. And that what makes it a little bit annoying, I must admit, because with physical book, you could take a moment to reflect on the story, on yourself, think about what you need to buy or to do, and then you go back to the same place on the page, and there is no need to rewind back and to find the place where you stopped listening. This is quite stressful. I hate that. And speaking of ebooks, uh, I have one myself. I mean the both Kindle and iPad. I use them both, but I have this love for paper books and not any paper books. I am a library fan. I love a book that has been read a lot of times before me and hopefully will be read a lot of times after me. And here I am, right in the middle, reading the story from the same book. It's just, I don't know. I guess it's because I used to go to the library as a kid, so it has this nostalgic feelings. So yeah, paper books, but not new, only library ones.
I remember buying a used copy of a psychology book. I think it was by Eric Byrne, and there was like he was making comments about certain people with certain like mental ill, maybe not mental illnesses, but destructive patterns. But the previous owner had circled something and wrote Jane exclamation mark exclamation mark
Oh my God.
exclamation mark. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's so nice that this book has this whole other layer of history, that not the content of the book, but the physical book itself. And that brought up images of like, who is this Jane character, and what
Yeah.
is the story here?
Yeah. I was raised to never make any mark in book, and still, I think I would not be comfortable to do that myself. But when I see something from previous people, it is so fun. And also, actually, since we are always talking about Jane Austen, I read a book about her, and apparently she done the same things. She just wrote comments in books she read. So apparently it was a thing. It's not something new. It always was a thing. So yeah, maybe someday I will also write something in book.
I'm on your side here. It feels like vandalism for me. It feels like I'm destroying something pure and beautiful
Yeah,
if I write on it. But yeah, maybe that's another good thing with e-readers, right? You can highlight, you can leave comments, and it doesn't destroy it. Obviously, English isn't your first language. You speak English very,
obviously.
very well. I do think that there's a lot of benefit that learners of English can have from reading in English. But something that many, many people tell me is that they're afraid, that they won't enjoy reading in English because they'll have to like look up every word they don't understand in a dictionary or something like this. Have you ever read anything in English? And if you have, what advice would you have for any people who are worried that they wouldn't understand anything?
Yes, I don't remember what was the first one that I read in English, but I definitely understand those people who are worried that they won't enjoy it because of the need to check every word in a dictionary. And I say that yes, it is not very enjoyable. That's why I remember starting a book with a dictionary to check every word I didn't understand. But then I got so bored, I just continued without the dictionary. I thought, okay, I will understand maybe 80%, like 85. I still understood the story, maybe not all of the details, but I felt a bit bad, like I was doing something wrong, like not in a way it should be done. But then I watched some English teacher or somebody who told that it was the exact way you should be doing that. Like you shouldn't check every other word in a dictionary, and it is actually very good habit to be able to grasp the meaning out of the context. And I was sitting there like, oh my god, I did everything right. So I don't remember if you were asking for advice for these people, but anyway, I will give it. I guess. I guess what one should do is just to make peace with the fact that you're not going to understand 100%. I think it's not even humanly possible to understand 100%. So 85 is fine, even 75. So you could start there, I guess. At least I did. And that was apparently a good way to start.
Yeah, and even, I, as an L1 user of English, as a native speaker of English, as someone with education in English, I teach English, I'm an examiner for English exams, I still don't understand 100% of the stuff that I read. I don't. I'm a big believer that if it's a good book, you should want to read it multiple times. And one thing I often recommend students is, you know, pick a book that you absolutely love that you've read in your first language and read it in English, because it'll take the pressure off a little bit. Because the gaps, the linguistic gaps that you have, you can fill those in with your memory of what happened, and that can make it really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite a good advice. And also, since we're talking about English, um, I get this huge sense of joy from knowing that I am reading the book the way it was actually written. So yeah, I guess it adds some of the motivation for me that like I don't
Mhm.
need a translator anymore. I am reading the original one. So yeah, I guess it's another reason to start doing this.
Yeah, and again, coming back to that point you made earlier about layering, that's another interesting thing, like how the the conclusions that we make as we get older, but also the different interpretations we can have from reading it in one language to the other language, that we think, oh, I interpreted it that way in that language, but now with this language, I feel, something's a bit different.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. And speaking of Jane Austen again, it's just, I think she suffers so much from the translation to Russian because maybe because in Russian literature there wasn't any funny or sarcastic women because it was mostly written by men. So we don't have the language to say of this, to speak of these easy jokes and sarcasm and all this funny stuff. So it just feels too heavy and almost medieval when you read it in Russian, and then you switch to English, and oh my God, it's so funny and light and modern. It's completely different book. So I remember Ekaterina Schulman, one of my favorite politologists and readers, she was talking about Jane Austen, and she said, a bit rude probably, but she said something like, okay, so people who read Jane Austen in Russian translation, what are you even read it for? Like, what do you get there? And it might be a little bit rude, but it's true. It's true. It's completely different book. So if you ever read Pride and Prejudice in Russian, it would be a transformative experience to read it in English. You would probably like it much better. At least I did.
I think there are some female authors who wrote books in this heavy way. I think like Wuthering Heights stands out as being one of those kind of heavy books. But in terms of that lightness of writing, you're right. And I don't know if you've read anything by Edith Wharton, but she also writes in that like lovely, light, like flowery style, which is different to, the 19th century or 18th century male writers that were like super dark and heavy.
I haven't
Um,
even heard of her, I believe. What was the name again?
I hope I'm getting the name right. Edith Wharton?
No, I should probably Google her and find something to read by her.
Yeah, she's an American writer. I think she's credited with inventing or popularizing some style called free indirect style or free indirect speech or something like this. I hope I'm getting the name right, but she is, yeah, a great writer. But let's move slightly away from that. Obviously, when a great book comes out, a lot of people say immediately, like, oh, this would be amazing as a movie. Famously, things like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, the movie series were arguably even more successful than the books. What, in your opinion, are the best and worst examples of books that became movies?
Hmm. I guess we could have a lot of bad examples of books becoming movies. It's like really a lot. But I have, and it is very surprising, sometimes you have an example where a movie is better than the book itself. And one of the most well known for me is Devil Wears Prada, where the movie is. I don't like the boyfriend character, of course. It's no wonder nobody likes him. But the movie itself, it's so cool. Miranda Priestley there, it's like the character, and it's very nice. That's why I thought, oh, the book should be even better. You know how book is always better than the movie, and it turns out it wasn't. It was quite bland and not really capturing. So yeah. And speaking of bad movie adaptations, I guess there are just a lot of them. I don't have anything particular in mind, but then again, sometimes it's um, not the like the director is not to blame. Sometimes the writing itself it's just so good that you cannot physically transform it into a movie without losing at least something. So I guess we should again make peace with the fact that mostly movies will be a bit worse than a book, at least for us bookworms. But then again, they might um, remind people that these books exist and you could actually read them. The only problem I have with this is that if you read a book after you watch the movie, you have these images in your head, and
Mhm.
it's quite disturbing that you cannot like imagine the character somehow different than you already have seen it. At least for me, it is so. That's why, for example, how to say it in English? I'm sad. I regret watching Emma before reading it because it is a nice movie, but still the book is better. But now I cannot imagine the characters otherwise because I have this Anya Taylor-Joy in my head, and it's hard to move out of it.
Yeah, I can't imagine like watching the movie of The Great Gatsby first and then reading it and then seeing Gatsby as Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. But actually, Great Gatsby movie was not that bad. I actually enjoyed that. I'm not sure
It
you
was all
did.
right. It was okay. Like the thing about Fitzgerald is that the thing that I love about Fitzgerald, I think that the thing that makes him such an amazing writer is that very often the characters are either unlikable or not very interesting, and the plot, nothing really seems to happen. But still, it's written in such a beautiful way that you lose yourself in the writing. All right, so I'd like to finish with a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions connected to reading or to literature. And I just want you to give me answers in very short forms. What was the last book you read?
It was Northanger Abbey, Jane Austen.
And before that?
And before that, Bulgakov, Master и Margarita.
Nice. I read White Guard by Bulgakov recently. A weird book. Anyway, this is the quick fire round. What are you planning to read next?
I want to read this nonfiction book called The End of Regime.
What's one book you've wanted to read for a long time but not yet read?
It's a bit shameful. I haven't read The Lord of the Rings. I tried it 2 or 3 times, but still yet have to read all of it.
I read The Hobbit earlier this year because I was also thinking I should read this, but I don't like Tolkien, then I'm not going to read The Lord of the Rings. Sorry. Horribly difficult question. Which country has produced the best literature?
This is the difficult question, but since I don't know that many languages, only Russian and English, and Britain has much longer literacy tradition, literacy. I guess it will be Britain, just because it's so damn long.
Who is one character from a book that you often think about?
Often think about. Hmm.
Maybe you think like, I hope she or he is doing well. I wonder what happened to him or her.
I'm not entirely sure, but since we were speaking the whole hour about Jane Austen, I won't deny that Elizabeth Bennet is quite dear to me, sarcastic as she were. So yeah, I think this is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, I hope the kid from Catcher in the Rye is doing okay. Is it Holden? I don't know if you've read Catcher in the Rye, the Salinger book.
Yeah, I just admitted not having read The Lord of the Rings, and I have to do it again. I haven't. Is it? It's just I heard that this book is the book you should read when you're a teenager yourself, and if the time has passed, it will not be as good.
I hated it the first time I read it. I read the first chapter and I put it down because I thought this is insufferably bad. I don't like it at all. I went back to it a couple of years ago and I loved it.
So you can read it as a grown-up.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and also maybe Lara Antipova from Dr. Zhivago. Just crushing. I think about her a lot. It's just crushing.
It's very surprising because I read it a long time ago and I don't remember her at all. In fact, I don't remember anything. Maybe I should reread it because uh, I actually believe that Boris Pasternak was also at one time of his life living in Berlin.
Ah,
We even have a restaurant named Pasternak right
wow.
on the corner. So yeah, maybe I should read this book there.
What's one scene from a book that haunts you? So not a character, but one scene that you maybe sleeping at night, you think back to that scene.
Ah, that's actually a difficult one. Uh, I'm not entirely sure I'm so haunted by the scene in the book. But if I'm speaking about the recent ones, I guess it's the scene from Master and Margarita, where she applies this magical cream, which makes her like 10 years younger, and then she became invisible and flew out of the window. I guess this one.
Yeah, there are many moments from that book that are
Yeah.
very memorable. Um, yeah, it's a wonderful one. Anyway, I can't ask you this. I was going to ask who is the best female author of all time, but I guess we'll go with top three.
Okay, okay. Well, one is obvious. We're talking about her already, Jane Austen. Uh, Another one. Uh, I'm not so sure. Of course, I think I could make this list if I have some time, but right now I'm completely blank. Are we talking about fiction or not only fiction?
I'm My biggest interest, I guess, is in reading fiction, but you can expand it. You can interpret the question how you want.
Okay, give me a second. I need to open my book Telegram channel. Maybe I will find some recent things. Uh, Actually, Uh, well, Harry Potter, I'm a fan, I have to confess. So I guess J.K. Rowling will have maybe not as like the best writer for me, but the story about Harry Potter has a part in my heart. And the last one will be uh, Irina Adoyevtseva or Adayevtseva, I'm not sure. She's not widely known. It is a Russian writer of, I believe, 19th century. And I started to read her book. I believe it was an autobiography. I had little expectations. I thought it would be boring, maybe moralistic or something of that sort. But it was so interesting. It's just, I say interesting because I don't know any more words in English, but it's so much more. It's very devastating to read about the tragic events in her life, but the way she is writing about them, again, as you said previously, you read it and you think, oh my God, they were the same people as we are now, completely the same, just 200 years between us.
Which book have you read the most times?
Pippi Longstocking.
And finally, this is a difficult question for the quickfire round, but if you could spend time in any fictional world, which would you choose?
In any fictional world.
So you could go into the world of any book, like you could go into the Harry Potter world or the Lord of the Rings world, or you could go into the Crime and Punishment world or the War and Peace world.
Oh, definitely not Crime and Punishment for sure. But I think I would choose some fantasy. Maybe, maybe even Master and Margarita. Not to be the main character, of course, it's way too dramatic for me, but maybe to just, observe all the fun from a safe place and then go back to my usual life because Master and Margarita's life just feels too dangerous and dramatic for me.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a chat with Voland. He seems like quite an
Yeah,
interesting person.
actually, have you seen the movie?
I haven't. I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't seen it. But I know a lot of people said very positive things about it.
I don't want to raise your expectations too high, but it's actually not that bad, especially Voland, this German actor. It's like he's so good at this role. Like it makes you even slightly uncomfortable how good he is, considering the role he's playing, I mean.
Yeah, not an easy one to play. But I've really enjoyed speaking to you, Anna. It's really nice to see you again and to speak to you after all of this time. Thank you for not just being in the past a wonderful student, but also for being a wonderful guest. But mostly for inspiring me to read more. Whenever I feel like I'm not in the mood for reading, I think back to your 2017 challenge of reading 100 books. I'm nowhere near that. I read maybe 20, 25 books a year. For me, that's amazing. But you are really, I often think about you as that person that's like so dedicated to reading. And yeah, you're kind of like my reading role model.
Oh, thank you. Just to go back to reality, I want to say that that was 1 year when I read 100 book, and I'm never going to repeat that experience because it's just something you maybe want to do once, not more. But yeah, it was an interesting one.
I wish you